Yo, 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 welcome to Pitch Report. I'm Mario.
And I'm Amilcar.
And it was a tough return to action this weekend for SDFC. And I guess it was a rough week for a lot of different players and teams, depending who you support. But we'll start at home with San Diego FC. They had tied 2-2 in the previous game. They had lost to Toluca 4-0 in leg 2. And then they lose 3-0 against San Jose. So I guess we haven't really visited our first for San Diego FC, but it's our first loss to a California team and a first loss on the road in a while.
Yeah, it was definitely an ugly loss. It was not ideal. We had talked about last time how things were didn't seem like it seemed like we're in like a kind of a rough patch, but then we chalked it up to like, well, we're still undefeated, so it's still okay. But now it kind of seems like we are hitting that kind of like sophomore slump. And one thing that kind of like stood out to me is like I saw like Manu Dua, another red card, and it's starting to see like are these like a bunch of mistakes that he's making where he's falling behind and then having to cause these like or create these fouls to kind of try to save the game. And this is like probably the second or third one he's had. And SDFC just had a couple of red cards probably the last 3 or 4 games. So that was probably the biggest concerning thing that I saw with the game. And then obviously just the lack of ability to score, even though San Jose is a pretty good team this year.
Yeah, I think San Jose is a really good team so far. They were projected to be good last year and they were pretty bad. And I guess maybe the projections were off by a year. But I second what you mentioned, they did not really seem to be able to play from the back, which they traditionally do. It was very similar to what Arsenal had happened to them against Man City, where they just didn't really have opportunities playing from the back. So then they had to rely on more long crosses. And the defense, they were getting burnt a lot, and that's not been something that's been usual for us. For the Manu Dua, though, do you think it was a red card?
I mean, I think it just depends on the way you look at it. I mean, my whole thing is like more of the trend that if it's like now this is like the second or third time it's happening. So I think also, which is maybe an interesting take, I think refs also know the players and their tendencies. And so if this is something that's happening pretty often, I think they're probably going to call or give a red card earlier for a player that has done this consistently versus, someone that never does something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it is frustrating. So basically, over the course of 4 games, you're gonna have them 2 games. Not even because I guess if you get literal with the minutes, it'd probably be about a game and a half based on the time you've had them. And I know San Diego FC has an identity, and they know. And I'm not like a tactical mastermind of any sort, but I really much think it's easier to play with 10 or 11 players than 10. So, and it seems like we're really trying to play with 10, and we did it well against Toluca once, but I don't know if that can be like the way we go going forward.
You're like, I'm no Pep Guardiola, but I think that'll work. Keep more players on the field. I think that's how it works, right?
Yeah, and I think that's maybe to the credit to San Diego FC. They still have a little bit of credit on my book, but I thought like, hey, we might still be able to come back from this when it was 2-0. And then once like they scored 3-0 before the half, I was like, okay, well, maybe not. And
now you're just hoping just hope it doesn't get to like 5 or 6. And I mean, at least it didn't, if we're looking at a positive.
Yeah. And I'm an optimist to a fault that I was like, maybe we tie and we continue like our undefeated away streak that goes back to last year. But yeah, we mentioned going to the international break that we felt like it came at a good time. It seems like we were right about that. However, I think the concerns are just getting a little bit worse. Yeah. What do you think going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a little bit frustrating. And I think ultimately, like having Chucky not playing, and I just hate to bring that up again and like consistently, but it's like you think of it as the amount of salary that this guy has, right? It's like a $6 million salary, which is probably 2, 3, 4 times more than most of the players on the team are playing. So it just makes you think, what could we have instead of that dead $6 million just sitting on the bench, or not even sitting on the bench. And that is almost like that. We need someone like that, like a spark or a little bit of creativity to come off the bench, or someone to just like kind of like wake things up a little bit. And it's funny because it's funny that you mentioned that it seems like the rankings are, a year off, which would make sense because we were projected to be last, right, last year, and then we did well, but hopefully it's not too literal and we can kind of come from this slump. But I will say I think the way we come out of this in the next 2 to 3 games is going to be big telltale on the rest of the season, because it's going to show how we're going to handle a handful of losses, which I don't think we've really had. Even last year, we had maybe 1, 2 maybe in a row that was bad, like a little thing like that, but it wasn't too much of that. So it's just gonna, I feel like we'll see how the character is going forward.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be really telling to see what we have coming up. We've been spoiled so far. We've gotten 6 games where we hadn't really missed Chucky because the team was still winning and then tying. But now that we've lost, if this continues, it'll definitely be, I think, something that continues to come up, and it'll create more pressure on the SDFC side, because previously there was really no incentive to bring him in. So Chucky kind of maybe had no leverage. If this continues, there could be maybe hope. But I would be very surprised if they brought him back. It would take a lot, I think, for that to actually happen.
Yeah, I think the coach and the front office would lose all credibility, right? Because they've
Yeah.
all come out and said like, yeah, we don't want him on our team. He's not going to be playing for us. So I've heard rumors that the summer transfer market, that someone in Mexico is going to end up picking him up and hopefully taking his salary. But I mean, the one name that we keep getting connected to, and I think officially has said that they're leaving, is Mo Salah, right?
Oh yeah, from Liverpool.
Yeah, I think it officially said he's not going to re-sign, and so I mean, what better place than San Diego?
Yeah, we have an Egyptian owner. Maybe he can create some sort of, or there probably is some sort of bond. I would be surprised if it's not at least a conversation. Hey, maybe San Diego, and he's going on a free transfer too, so that means we could maybe replace his contract with Chuki's.
Do you think that the players that are in Europe are kind of picking more East Coast teams? Because I think that's the general thing we've seen, right? Most of them are going to like East, maybe Midwest teams, but mostly like East Coast teams outside of LA. But I think LA is its own draw and its own thing. Do you think it's like because of like flight time to get back home, or to see family, or do you think it doesn't play at all?
I think it plays well. We kind of mentioned after our episode with Griezmann going to Orlando, which is in the East Coast. It's a pretty easy hub to Europe. I think it'll be more telling with younger players. Mo Salah's still, I think, like 33 or so. But players that have a little bit more choice, I could see them going more East Coast. It's definitely an advantage if you're European based or African based and you're going to be getting called up to your national team or something like that. It's easier. You want to go visit family, whatnot. I think if you're a little later in your career, maybe not going to be in your international team anymore, then you're more willing to just go somewhere like where you're going to either be competitive and win or have a nice environment for your family. I think an example is like Thomas Mueller. He's not in the German national team anymore. He went to the West Coast to Vancouver. And I think part of that choice was good standard of living or like a more European like feel. So I think older players will come to the West Coast, but maybe young players, I think there is a competitive advantage for the East Coast.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. But then, like, it's funny because then we mentioned like LA, Seattle, and like Vancouver and stuff. So that's always kind of an interesting take. Although I feel like LA for a younger player is very enticing, just because it's just like Hollywood and the amount of like money that there is, marketing dollars and stuff. And I was thinking like San Diego. I think the reason Miami is so enticing is obviously it's also a similar lifestyle, like you were saying, like Spanish speaking. A lot of the players are from Latin America or European countries where they speak Spanish. For Griezmann's, he's coming from Madrid to Orlando, which is close enough to Miami, which is just a very Hispanic population. So Mo Salah probably not going to be the same draw to San Diego, because I
Yeah.
was thinking, oh yeah, it's very Latin American, very Hispanic population. But I would love for like that Egyptian connection to really help out and get us like that. That would be insane if we had a player like that. Like that would be kind of an unstoppable force.
It would be so cool. And if he can stay in shape, play 4 years, 5 years in the club, It's a new club. He's already a club legend in Liverpool. He could become a club legend for a really new team in San Diego. So there's definitely an opportunity. I would say more than a chance. If I'm like quoting like Dumb and Dumber, I think we're more than 1 in a million. I would say, and at least we have a beautiful city to work with. It's not like we're trying to sell them on, I don't know, somewhere else. I'm not gonna call anyone out, but San Diego's a beautiful city.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully something will work out, but I think it's also going to be needed just for like sell tickets also, and just kind of keep everyone engaged, especially if it happens where we're not winning, a lot of games, and or we go on like a little losing streak or something like that. I think fans could be very I don't know, disengaged if the team starts losing, especially if maybe the Padres are doing really well or the Wave are doing really well. You start thinking about things like that. And, the Wave made splash, huge signing too. So, I mean, they're really trying to make moves as well. So,
Yeah, that's a really good point too. The ticket sales, jersey sales, I'm sure you would see a pretty interesting spike in sales of all of the above if you can get a marquee signing like Salah.
yeah, I mean, I think when you go to games, I'll use like at least you used to see almost Chucky Lozano's jerseys, especially. I will say, especially maybe the first 4 or 5 games before Dreyer really like kind of came into his own. It was basically Chucky jerseys or no players. Like I didn't see any players of anybody else until like now. It's a lot of Dreyer jerseys too.
Yeah, actually, and I for that reason almost never get a player jersey unless it's like a verified club legend or someone that's like already like good. I do for the Padres. Even the player I would consider for the Padres now is Machado. He's pretty tied to San Diego, and
Not
he's had a great
Tatis.
career.
Wow.
Tatis is a little bit more risky, even though it's become less. I think he's more of a mainstay now. But I mean, Machado is an owner of San Diego FC. I think he's pretty much most likely going to stay here.
Yeah. So, what players do you have on jerseys?
Ooh, for jerseys, for soccer jerseys, I have Ronaldo, Giovanni Dos Santos, which was not there a long time.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways I learned. I have an Henry jersey.
Okay.
And that's basically it. The San Diego FC jersey I'm wearing, it's blank. I'm trying to think.
You have a Messi jersey too, don't you?
A Messi one. I mean, not same thing. And other than that, I think that's it. I've mentioned I want to get an England Kane jersey, but he's already the all-time leading goal scorer.
Yeah.
I've liked them before, but I just like wait to commit, if that makes sense.
It's funny because I'm the opposite. I feel like I get jerseys of players like when they're really young, and then a lot of the times their numbers change. So like I have one of my Spain jerseys I got a couple years ago is Lamine Yamal with number 19, and so
cool.
Probably not gonna be number 19. I have a Cristiano Ronaldo jersey, but it's number 9. Oh, it's like the one that's in the back right there. It's Cristiano Ronaldo number 9, and he only played like a year I think with that jersey. And then I have like an Alvaro Morata number 21 jersey. So I have like a bunch of random jerseys of like really, really young players that, ended up either being good and switching numbers or just like that. So I'm like, maybe I need to start thinking about the players that I'm getting, maybe get a little bit more tenured players.
Well, you were rocking, I think, a Van Nistelrooy jersey last time I saw you, right?
Yeah.
That one's cool. Like, it's with like the purple.
Mm-hmm. With the purple, and it's like the bwin.com one. So
yeah,
that one. And then I have like a Raul jersey from when they were like Ben Q Siemens on the front. So that was also a neat one, but that was already like kind of a club legend, so kind of what you're talking about already there. But I think the way I reason it or I rationalize it is like, if this like I don't want to get a jersey for a player and they leave like in a year or two because they're older or whatever. So that's why I'm like, if I get a young guy, they'll stay here forever, I will say my last jersey was a Valverde Real Madrid jersey, so hopefully he'll be around for a while. He's a captain and stuff.
And you got a Casillas one too, right? A green one?
I do. Yeah. Like Casillas green jersey too, which is also, I guess, a club legend at that point too. So maybe I have a mix. For me, it's just like, who am I vibing with, who I like, But a lot of them are like young up and coming players that I enjoy watching, and so I ended up picking them.
I learned about the not getting young players that could get traded the hard way with a Drew Brees jersey. I got it for the Chargers. I'm wearing it to school. I think I was in like 8th grade. I was like so excited. And then I think it was my first time wearing it. Someone's like, "Oh, he got traded." I was like, "Wait, what?" And this is before smartphones, so I couldn't even like verify it right away. So that's kind of how I learned, and from that point on, I was kind of like,
Man, scarred for life at a young Mario was scarred for life.
yeah, basically.
Oh my god, that's too good.
But moving on, I guess, after that painful memory. So we have some exciting matchups this upcoming week. We have the Champions League round of 16. Tomorrow, Tuesday, we have, or today, depending when you're listening, Sporting. No, sorry, I got that one confused. That was the week before. Okay, we actually have, moving on to international break. So we had, like we mentioned, some teams that had a good international break, some that had a medium one, and maybe a bad one. We can start quickly with Italy failing to qualify for the World Cup for the third time in a row. They lost the penalties in Bosnia. Oof.
Dude, that was rough. It's funny because we were I think we were talking about this a couple episodes ago and thinking like, do you think they're gonna make it? And we're just like, we were like not convinced. But then like you see, a lot of their players are very very solid players. Now it almost makes me think like, is it in their head at this point?
Yeah.
To just like they're putting so much pressure on themselves to make the World Cup that they end up not making it. And you mentioned last time that like UEFA is probably one of the hardest ones to make it into. But like they didn't lose into against like a Spain or a France or a Germany. It was like Bosnia. Like, not that they're not a great team, but it's like when you think about pedigree, you think like Italy's at the top, with all the World Cups they've won. And then you're just like, dude, you really fell through it. And I feel like you could kind of see the team falling under pressure towards the second half of that game. And then in penalties, it was just terrible. Like, they're just bad penalty takes. The most frustrating ones, the ones where the goalie doesn't even block it, and you're just sky it or hits the post, like the most annoying one. So it's a bummer because it's like when you think about France, Italy. I know you love the jersey, so it's like bummer not to get to see the jersey, being played. But just it's just the pedigree, and it's just another European team that you think should be in there.
Yeah, I have no like specific connection to like Italy or anything, but my heart goes out to them. It's a country that just has such a big football fan base, passion. So it's honestly like just one of those things where, wow, that is so sad. You mentioned though, like you have to make it. There's a lot of like lower ranked teams that somehow made it in Europe, and you talk about like it was Bosnia this time. The team that knocked them out last World Cup or last qualifiers was North Macedonia. So at the end of the day, like what's going on that you're not winning the games that you're supposed to? So all around, just like really sad, and I just feel really bad.
Yeah, and it's like salt in the wound when you realize like there's like well, we've mentioned in the beginning, like this World Cup's so much bigger this year. It's like 48 teams, right? So it's like how did you not make it this time? If you were gonna make it the last time, it was almost like, oh, surefire way. Like we've seen super random nations, random countries. Granted, they're in maybe less competitive divisions, but you just like, you thought this was the year. But it's a bummer, man. You hate to see it, but maybe in 4 years, maybe next World Cup.
I mean, you would think it's going to be hosted in close to them, basically Spain, Morocco, Portugal. So maybe a few more qualifying spots. But if this year was 50% easier to get in theory, and they still didn't do it, who knows? But I really hope, for the sake of just like football fans, there's going to be 16-year-old kids that have never seen Italy in the World Cup next time they qualify, assuming it's in 2030. But I guess,
Moving on to the final.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, or in the final.
Yeah.
But moving on to teams that are qualifying, maybe not looking great, but the U.S. lost to Belgium 5-2 and then Portugal 2-0 in the U.S. I think this is getting a little concerning for the U.S. national team, considering they're hosting pretty soon. And these are probably teams are expected to at least compete against if they want to have a decent home World Cup. But any takeaways for this one, Amilcar?
Yeah, I mean, Belgium putting 5 past them is just like insane. That's unacceptable. Like the US defense has always been good enough to where they're not getting embarrassed, and they can stay in games, and sometimes that's when you're looking at the American team, that's like kind of what you ask of them. You're like, all right, just stay in the game. Let's see if we can make a counter. Like I remember so many Donovan teams that, where he just kind of came out of nowhere and scored goals and just like they're usually in the games, maybe they'll lose a 2-1, 1-0, things like that, but they don't generally get blown out completely. And so this was a really, really concerning for me. And just in terms of the defense, like this is a defense not as stout as we thought it was going to be. And then just like with Pochettino, it's just like, I don't know, like, was he the right hire? Like, is it American talent? Is it the team's just not playing together? Like, it's just, yeah, it's really hard to like put your finger on, and it's getting way too close to the World Cup to continue saying like, oh, we're going to figure it out, or like, we're going to, try new things or figure out the teams. Like, it is getting very concerning.
Yeah, I think this has been in theory like the golden generation of the US in terms of players. If you're measuring by players that are in good teams in Europe, these are the most that we've had. But traditionally, the US has been able to, I guess, compete against other teams that are on paper better than them. We went to overtime with Belgium in the 2014 World Cup, and this team with arguably better players, quote unquote, did not. They competed for one half, but then second half just got blown out. So I think, yeah, it's looking a little worrisome for the US. If I'm trying to be optimistic, though, I guess maybe it's better than getting like, I guess if they got good results, they maybe wouldn't fix anything. So this kind of tells them like, okay, it's not that. So trying to take on like an entrepreneurial approach where you're trying to fail quickly and modify your product, before
Man,
launch.
love the positivity. You're really like stretching there. You're like, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
then they wouldn't have failed, so they wouldn't have fixed anything. But then if they didn't have to fix anything, they were just good. Like, we also don't want that, So,
Yeah.
oh my God. But at least, I mean, England is kind of on that same boat. They drew to Uruguay and then lost to Japan. For them, I think it's also like a coach thing. It's like, who are they calling up? I know we've mentioned a little bit about like the beef between Trent Alexander-Arnold and the manager, and just he didn't get
Thomas
called up.
Tuchel,
And it seems like they're kind of trying new things all the time and haven't quite figured out how they want to play. And that's really hurting them against like a team. Uruguay, you can accept a draw there is totally fine, because Uruguay is a great team. But against Japan, it just seems like that's something you're probably a game you should be winning, especially going into the World Cup, like as a confidence booster, and being like, all right, playing against teams that are of higher caliber, like how are we performing? And it doesn't seem like they're up to the task, especially for a team that is, I would venture to say, like a dark horse for the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had before the break, like going into this international break, is England is maybe top 4, top 5 in likeliness to win.
Mm.
And I believe they lost at home too against Japan. I want to think all the changes just maybe mean Thomas Tuchel doesn't know like what his best starting 11 is. So that's why I maybe would want to, again, optimistically be thinking he's just trying to figure out, okay, what is going to work out best? And hopefully now he got that answer, which I think is what the US has had issues with as well. I think most coaches, a lot of teams are, unless you're France or like maybe Argentina. But yeah, I think they're trying to just finalize, okay, who am I putting out there on June 11th?
But also, Harry Kane didn't play though either, so I think that that's, I guess, a benefit. And
He's got to be fresh to beat Real Madrid tomorrow.
Oh God, we'll see. We'll see if he even plays. But I think he's probably the best player, right? So I mean, you could argue he's our best player, and I don't even think Jude Bellingham also didn't play because he was still coming back from injury. So if we're gonna also look at the positivity there, we're talking about 2 top level players, 2 Ballon d'Or hopefuls. Like, so those people can change, a game or a tournament. So there's maybe something there as well, but it seems like what's trying isn't working. But maybe this is, like you said, trial and error, getting to the point where they need to. What's that final star?
Yeah, and I want to give one more shout out to Mexico, who also played the same rivals as the US. They played first Portugal. They drew 0-0 at the newly renovated or newly painted Estadio Azteca, depending on how you want to look at it. And then they drew in Chicago against Belgium 1-1. And defense was questionable for the US, and I think for Mexico the defense was the kind of like the bright spot. That it's looking a little bit more solid, and overall, I'm optimistic from what I saw, just because the years leading up to this World Cup have been pretty bad. So I think there is hope. On the flip side, though, we tied, we didn't win. So you're not going to get too far if you're tying games. That can maybe take you to extra time. And in theory, assuming Mexico can get out of the group stage, which I believe they should be able to, you're probably going to play a Belgium, a Portugal. So we still haven't seen enough to beat these teams, but at least we're not quite losing yet. So I think they're making progress in the right direction, but the road is still pretty long for them.
How do you feel about them getting better results than the US? Is that even a positive for you, or you think like the US is like not even in the same level as the US is not the same level as Mexico? Or do you feel some sort of positive, like, oh, okay, cool, like we're moving in the right direction?
I think we're moving in the right direction. Overall, I want the Americas, North and South America, to have the best possible World Cup.
Mhm.
So I'm rooting for American teams overall, but I see Mexico and the US as very similar, even though the US has players in better teams and better leagues. I think any given day they can beat each other. So I don't believe either team is too far off from each other. It could have very easily, in my opinion, been the same results, but like you could flop them if we played in a few weeks. So I think the US is not as far from maybe getting the same results as Mexico, and vice versa. But at least Mexico seems to be able to keep a little bit more pace. I believe also them playing in Mexico is going to be more of a value add than maybe it would be for the US playing in the US. If you get like a plus like 10% for the US playing in the US, I would give Mexico like a plus 15 to 20, particularly playing in like El Azteca with the altitude there. I definitely think they're going to have that going for them, that more so than the US.
Yeah, and I think funny enough, I think you've mentioned in the past, like thinking that Mexico's golden era, I think for Mexico was when you thought, although they had the most players in Europe, and you almost mentioned that almost kind of was a detriment to them because they had too many players playing in different places, and they were better when a lot of the teams were playing in Mexico. Or at least I feel like I remember you mentioning something like that.
Yeah, because especially when your team's made up of mostly Liga MX players, they're usually all starting, getting a lot of minutes, where you might have really good players in Europe, but they might not have as many minutes, so they're not in the like same like shape in that regard.
Yeah, that, and
But
I think they also play just completely different forms of football, right? Like even in leagues, I think you have like the EPL plays a certain style, La Liga is a different style, the Italian league is different style. So I think even having them in different countries peppered out is also just kind of a weird thing of like having to readapt to, okay, how are we going to play now?
absolutely. So there's more to dissect, and we'll definitely get into it in our group stage breakdown coming up pretty soon. But overall, I'm happy with this international break. But I do want to touch on Spain really quick. How did you feel overall?
Felt good, man. I think Spain's playing well. I think they're in a good spot. Not super concerned about any results or anything like that. And I think this is more of a warm up and just trying to get people to play. I think they're playing some substitutes and kind of same thing, trying to get their starting 11. I think they have a better idea than some of the teams that we just talked about on who their starting 11 is. I think we have some non-negotiable starters, right? But then trying to find the subs and really just who's going to kind of fill in. And I think we scored a ton of goals this break, so that's always exciting, especially for a team that generally or historically has played just ball possession and winning games 1-0, 2-0. So it makes me excited to watch the World Cup this next year and see if it's a little more high scoring games.
Because you had the draw with Egypt and then the 3-0 with Serbia. Man, Amilcar, must be nice. For you, I'm guessing in your head, you're thinking like, my team might win the World Cup. Where I'm thinking, I will be happy we make it to the quarterfinals.
Wait, that's actually a hilarious mentality because I feel like maybe not 10 years ago, probably like 20 years ago growing up, that's how it was in Spain. I was like, hopefully like they make it out of the group stage. And then like, I will say that once they make it out of the group stage, like anything can happen. You know, like you go on like 1, 2, 3 games, you're in the quarters, like you're in the semis, you know? So, but yeah, now I think that there's more of an expectation on, all right, like if we don't make it to the semis, like it's going to be a little bit upsetting. And I know that there was there's a potential if Argentina wins their group and Spain is second or vice versa, like first and second, that it's Argentina against Spain in the second round, which would be insane to watch that so early on. But there's also some other fun matchups. So yeah, I think that we could just plug in that this is what we're going to be talking about for the World Cup, and we'll kind of come back to our roots of the kind of the what started us with the 2 mics, one World Cup, and do a little bit more analysis with the World Cup and stuff. But I think there could be some really fun games really early on, which is both good and bad depending on who you are.
Yeah, I guess that's a plus you get with maybe like the 48 teams format, which is a first for the World Cup. We do have some exciting matchups you mentioned, and they're coming up tomorrow and Wednesday respectively. So we got Real Madrid with Bayern, which we kind of teased a little bit, and Sporting and Arsenal. How are you feeling about the game tomorrow as a Real Madrid fan?
It's gonna be a tough game. I think I'm curious to see. Obviously, we lost against Mallorca, which is in relegation, or were in relegation until they beat us. And so there's Champions League. I still think Real Madrid is a different team in the Champions League, but this season has been so up and down, and they almost essentially lost La Liga. And so it's been really, really frustrating to watch. So I think I got to see how this first game looks, just to see if it's more of that Champions League magic. You know, I'm confident, a little bit confident, but still, it's going to be a really, really tough matchup.
I think Real Madrid is extremely locked in on the Champions League. They said, you know what, La Liga's done. Let's lock in. We're just gonna go for the Champions League again.
I would hate to hear that. But you know, honestly, I will say I'll take the Champions League over La Liga any day. So, and we do know that Real Madrid, that's what they fight for. So, but we'll see. I'm excited for that match.
Anytime I hang out with you and Mr. Leo, we got 15.
Yeah, we used to say we had 9, then we had 10, and then now it's just like 15. You know, you guys are still at 5.
Yeah.
Speaking of Barcelona, I think you guys are going to have a really good matchup. But you guys have Atletico Madrid, and you all beat them 2-1 in La Liga this week. And so how are you feeling about that one?
I'm feeling good. I mean, we're going to play them very soon again. So I just hope we can beat them again by whatever margin. But I think when you get with these Real Madrid, Atletico, Barcelona, any given day, even if one team's doing better than the other, in this case, I'm referencing La Liga, you just really don't know what can happen. It really, I think, comes down to just who shows up a little bit better that given day. But I do
and for Barcelona, they're playing at home to start, right? So that is maybe not ideal if they don't start off super hot, you know, because like the last time they had Atletico Madrid versus Barcelona, it was I think they played in Madrid and they won 5 or 3-0 or something like that, and then they came back and almost had a remontada, but they didn't. So they have to start off strong.
Yeah, and I think when you play a team so many times, in this case, it's like 3 times in like 10 or something days.
Mm-hmm.
I know the games are important. I know they're professionals, but I feel like at a certain point, they kind of just blend into each other. And like, if you get into like averages of which team would win X amount of times versus the other, you might get an outlier in a win. And if Atletico can draw one game against Barcelona and then pull off the other win, and then they go through, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean that I think those are the 2 most exciting games. The Sporting Arsenal, I mean that'll be, if we know anything, I think it should be Arsenal going through there. The PSG Liverpool, based off what Liverpool's been doing, and they got shut out against Man City this weekend. Liverpool seem like they're just crumbling. Like it seems like they're just going down, and there's no end in sight. So, and the way PSG's been playing the last couple of months has been really lights out. So I think that the most competitive ones are going to be the Barcelona Atletico and the Real Madrid Bayern Munich. And you know, we've said this many times that they were going to be competitive, or that things are going to be one way or the other, and then we're proven wrong. So hopefully we are, and hopefully all the games are competitive. But you know, we shall see. We'll be back next week with see how bad our takes were.
I agree. And on the note of like the PSG Liverpool game, my brother Jesus mentioned that according to him, Liverpool's going to the slaughterhouse. I think, if I'm quoting him correctly, and he actually said that in an upcoming episode that we've already recorded but are going to release. Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. We had been kind of prepping this episode for like over a year now, right? We just hadn't actually done it. So we did a take on March Madness, non-alcoholic beer tournament. So we had we had I think 12 teams and matched up with 12 beers, and we were able to talk with Mr. Leo and your brother. And obviously us too, about just a bunch of random soccer takes and some pretty spicy takes, I will say. And then kind of did the little tournament style for the NA beers, which it was a blast. I had a ton of fun. So
Yeah,
hopefully,
me too.
everyone will enjoy listening to it also.
Yeah, so we should have that episode out pretty soon. It'll follow right after this episode within a couple of days. So we'll post on our Instagram about it when it's ready.
Yeah, and that about does it for today's episode. So thanks for joining us. Really appreciate being part of your day, talking soccer and hanging out. Remember, you can find us on Instagram and X at _Pitch Report, and now on video at Pitch Report Pod. I'm Amilcar.
I'm Mario.
Bye.
Bye.